All right, so in our last explainer, we took a deep dive into triglycerides, right? The body's main fuel reserve. But the lipid family has way more to it than just storing energy. Today, we're going to get to know two other key players, phospholipids and sterols. These are the lipids that are all about structure and regulation.
So let's think about this. If triglycerides are the fuel that powers the engine, what are the actual nuts and bolts? What are the lipids that serve as the building materials, the very architecture of our cells, and the managers that regulate all the complex stuff happening inside? Well, let's find out. First up, we've got phospholipids, and if you need a way to think about them, just call them the great connectors. They're absolutely essential for, creating the very boundaries of our cells and just keeping everything running smoothly.
Now, when you look at its structure, a phospholipid seems an awful lot like a triglyceride. I mean, they both have that same glycerol backbone. But here's the critical difference. A triglyceride has 3 fatty acid tails, right? A phospholipid says, I'm good with 2, and it swaps out that 3rd fatty acid for a phosphate group. And that one little substitution, it changes everything. It's the key to all of its unique powers.
Because adding that phosphate group gives the molecule a kind of split personality. It makes it amphiphilic. It's a fancy word, but all it means is that the molecule has 2 different sides to it. One part that loves water, we call that hydrophilic, and another part that fears it, which is hydrophobic. And you can see that split personality right here. The glycerol and the phosphate group form what we call the head. It's hydrophilic, so it's perfectly happy to hang out with water. But then you have the 2 fatty acid tails. They're hydrophobic, and they will do anything to get away from water.
So why does this matter so much? Well, this dual nature is exactly what allows our cells to exist. When you put these phospholipids in a watery environment, like, our bodies, they automatically arrange themselves into what's called a phospholipid bilayer. The water-fearing tails all point inward, hiding from the water, while the water-loving heads face outward, towards the watery environments both inside and outside the cell. This bilayer is the fundamental structure of every single cell membrane you have. It makes them the ultimate gatekeepers for our cells.
And it turns out this exact same property, the love-hate relationship with water, also makes phospholipids super useful in the food we eat. It allows them to work as incredibly powerful emulsifiers. So what's an emulsifier? It's basically a substance that can get 2 things that normally hate each other, like oil and water, to mix together and actually stay mixed. Because the phospholipid has a water-loving head and fat-loving tails, it can grab onto both at the same time, creating a stable blend. And you see this in action all the time, probably without even realizing it. The most common one in food is called lecithin, which you find in stuff like egg yolks and soybeans. Lecithin is the secret ingredient that keeps your salad dressing from separating and gives things like mayonnaise, processed cheese, and even cake batter that smooth, consistent texture.
Okay, let's switch gears. Now we're going to turn to our second category of lipids, the sterols. And compared to what we've been talking about, these guys have a totally different molecular design.
Yeah, seriously. Forget about glycerol, backbones, and fatty acid chains. When you think of sterols, I want you to think about rings. They're built around this really distinctive 4-ring carbon structure. It's their defining feature.
Now, the most famous sterol of all is, of course, cholesterol. And I know it's got a pretty bad reputation, but the truth is cholesterol is absolutely essential for life. It's the most common sterol in our bodies, and it acts as a master precursor, which just means it's the starting point, the raw material for making a bunch of other really important stuff. I mean, look at this list. Cholesterol is a key part of our cell membranes, helping to keep them fluid and stable. It's the building block for all our steroid hormones. We're talking testosterone, estrogen, you name it. Your body uses cholesterol and sunlight to make vitamin D, and it's needed to produce bile acids, which are crucial for digesting fat. It's so important, in fact, that your own liver manufactures about 2/3 of all the cholesterol in your body. And that brings us to the whole cholesterol story. For decades, we were all told to avoid foods with cholesterol like the plague. But as it turns out, the reality is a little more complicated.
So let's just ask the big question head on. Is the cholesterol you eat in your food, from things like eggs or shrimp, the main reason people get high blood cholesterol?
Well, the science shows us something really fascinating. Our bodies have this amazing feedback system. Check this out. When your dietary cholesterol intake goes up, your liver gets the signal and actually decreases its own production. It pumps the brakes.
But you know what tells the liver to increase production? A high intake of saturated fat. So for most people, the amount of saturated fat you eat has a much bigger impact on your blood cholesterol levels than the amount of cholesterol you eat. And hey, plants have sterols too. We call them phytosterols. They look a lot like cholesterol, structurally speaking. And because of that similarity, they actually compete with cholesterol to get absorbed in our intestines. So eating plenty of plant sterols from things like grains, nuts, and seeds can actually help block some cholesterol from ever getting into your bloodstream in the first place.
So let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. First, phospholipids are those amazing amphiphilic connectors that build our cell membranes and work as emulsifiers. Second, sterols are the ring-structured lipids, with cholesterol being the master architect for vital things like hormones and vitamin D. And finally, the big plot twist. When it comes to blood cholesterol, the real villain for most of us isn't the cholesterol in our food, but a high intake of saturated fat.
Okay, so we've met the whole lipid family now. We have triglycerides for energy and phospholipids and sterols for structure and regulation. But that leaves one huge question hanging in the air, doesn't it? How on earth do we get these fats, which hate water, from the food we eat, through our very watery bloodstream and deliver to the cells that need them? That's the puzzle we'll be solving in our very next explainer on lipid digestion and absorption. I'll see you there.